Hey everyone, so I thought I'd make a little post today about how I handle pricing for the custom illustrations that I sell online. So I remember when I was trying to get it started selling custom art years ago, I had a really hard time finding any sort of definitive guide for exactly what the price should be. And as you've probably found out, this is because sadly there is no real concrete answer on the exact price you should list your work at. That being said, there are a few things you can do to figure out a really good starting point and then sort of adjust as needed from there. So before you even start worrying about pricing, the biggest thing that you need to know is exactly what you are going to offer customers. If your custom art or illustrations are just too broad or vague, it's really hard to predict what a customer might ask for and how long something like that might take you. Now, plus, if you're too open-ended and allow endless customization, your potential client might feel overwhelmed and move on to an artist with a more simplified option. In my case, I frequently draw, let's pull them up here. I frequently draw silly characters in cartoons with oversized heads. It's just something I've always done. So I like to think of my preferred style as a cross between Funko Pop style figures and Cyanide and Happiness comics. So, I just happened to luck out that a friend of mine, wanted to commission a portrait in that style. So before I even had the listing ready, I already had a demonstration of what I wanted to offer, which was cartoon portraits for families and animal lovers. So, no backgrounds, no complicated options, just, selecting the number of individual people and pets that were going to be in the image. This simplicity really allowed me to focus on the cost per character and sort of standardize my prices pretty quickly. It also makes it really easy for my customers to sort of know what they're going to get, and they don't have to select all these options, and the listing's really simple. So when you're setting up your listing or your ad, you really need to understand the competitor's pricing, style, and skill level in the market that you plan to sell in. So, I knew I was going to sell on Etsy, so I just kind of did a quick cursory search using terms that I thought people might use to find a listing like mine, cartoon illustrations, cartoon custom portraits, pet portraits, those kind of things. And so I found a lot of different listings that sort of gave me an idea of where to start. And I found that a lot of them were using a similar setup where it was just focusing on the number of people and pets that were going to be in the illustration. And a lot of the established illustrators didn't really go below a $30 price point for just that initial individual character. So, I took this figure and I sort of set up a spreadsheet to figure out the finer details. $28 to $30 if we really want to get into, hitting the dartboard somewhere. $28 to $30 is actually a pretty good starting point for a single illustrated portrait, with no additional features or backgrounds. Usually it's a more cartoony style as well. And you might be tempted to say, well, I'll list it for $20 because that's still a good price to get paid for, just drawing one person. And this is true, but you need to always consider additional costs and calculate a net profit accordingly. So in my example here, I have single character illustrations listed for $35. From here, I need to extract the expenses that I would lose to things like Etsy fees, shipping costs, and materials. So, I have this little thing here. It calculates the Etsy fees, transaction fees for selling. Production currently set at $0. We'll get to that later. My production costs are actually $5 because I have to, print it on fine art paper, and I use foam board to make sure that it doesn't bend in transit and a whole bunch of other things. So now I know that my net profit is $26.75 for a single person. This is the point where I like to start working up the hourly wages that I want to make. So according to sites like Indeed and Glassdoor, the average illustrator in first world countries makes about $25 an hour. But if you're just getting started or you're a bit rusty like I was when I was making these initially, it's just not realistic. People are charging $30, maybe $40 for a single individual portrait in my style or in a style that is similar to mine. And so if it was going to take me 4 hours to do it, it's just not feasible to charge over twice the market value for something that they can get for half the cost and probably in the same amount of days, a similar turnaround time. So what I did was I sort of set up a bare minimum that I would not go below, so there's no reason I should make less than $9 an hour on a portrait. Then I had a couple more realistic goals that were very obtainable, and they kind of matched the rate of what I get paid for my day job working from home. And then I had a stretch goal, which was more along the line of market standards and kind of what I'd like to be making an hour. So when you get these numbers figured out, you can simply divide your net profit by the hourly rate that you want to make, and this will tell you how many hours, maximum number of hours you can spend on the project and make that hourly rate. So, in this case, you have to work 3 hours or less on a single portrait to make $9 an hour, and if I wanted to make $20 an hour, well, I need to finish it in probably an hour and 15 minutes. So you might be saying, but Lindsay, you said you were going to focus on pricing, not completion times. I'm sorry, you probably don't talk like that. Anyway, I know, but this is really how you can dial in your rates and keep yourself on track so you aren't making an abysmal rate when you're using this specialized skill. The more work you do and the more you draw, the faster you're going to get. So these numbers can really help figure out how fast you need to complete work in order to compete with market prices, but, not work for less than minimum wage. As I've completed more and more portraits, my hourly rate has increased over time, not because I'm really raising my prices by that much. They did go up a little bit, but it's because I'm becoming more efficient, and I've, picked up a few hacks and things that help me complete these quite a bit quicker. Something important to recognize as well is that a good marketing strategy usually includes some giveaways at launch to help sort of establish feedback, get you some examples going, and help attract new customers. When my friend commissioned this for first portrait, I severely undercharged. I mean, it's like less than 50% of what the current rate would be for something like this. However, I was able to use this commission to help set up the initial listing with a real-life example of the type of art I was offering. My prices were still pretty low for the first 2 or 3 Etsy orders too, but I was only listing 1 or 2 commissions at a time, so I could sort of quickly reevaluate and edit prices as needed. And I think they did fluctuate quite a bit for those first 2 to 4 weeks. I kind of had to really dial it in. A really good example of something that happened early on was I got a commission for a portrait of a family of 9. 9 different characters. And, I was super fortunate that it was really early in the season. The client was super nice and had no rush whatsoever. But my prices were so low. I think it was about half the price of what I charge for 9 individuals now. My prices were so low that I almost dipped below $10 an hour, which is that's the worst I've done on any of my portraits so far. I did eventually complete the work, but it sort of made me go back to the drawing board and again reevaluate my prices for portraits with higher numbers of individuals. And I also temporarily had to remove the option to commission a portrait for more than 6 people because, until I finished up that big portrait, I just didn't want another big one coming in that I couldn't get done in time. And to this day, I will only list about 2, maybe 3 commission spots at a time, just to make sure that I don't get completely inundated with a bunch of large time-consuming orders all at once. So to wrap up, you just want to try to understand the market prices as much as possible and really figure out how much you want to make for each hour of work you're going to do, setting a minimum and maximum goal. Once you have these figures, it will really help provide you with concrete, realistic expectations on how long a commission should take to finish. If you do a couple and you find that the time expectations are completely unreasonable or your hourly rate is abysmal, then you need to raise your prices. Just, be careful not to raise them too much too fast because you can scare people off. But, you shouldn't be working for peanuts. This is a job just like anything else, and for commercial illustration, you need to be getting paid. Now, if you check the description and wherever this is posted, I will have included a link to this simple spreadsheet you see on my screen. This will sort of help you evaluate your list prices to profits to time goals. Now, if you copy the document and save it to your Google Drive, you can go in and edit it so it will sort of, meet your needs and expectations. Currently, I have it set up to sort of match what I'm doing. These are the prices that I charge for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 individuals. There's no way I would offer more than 10 without having to speak with the person in advance. But you've got 1 and it's got the list prices. It's got the formula in there if you're selling on Etsy to automatically calculate how much you're going to lose to Etsy fees and transaction fees. Etsy fees are a little bit different. It has to do with using the platform. Transaction fees have to do with them processing the payment for you. This will be set to 0 for you, but if it costs you, if you're printing or you're using physical materials, you need to calculate what your production costs are. This includes things like paper, envelopes. Like I said, I use pieces of foam board to make sure that it doesn't bend in transit, all that stuff. So it'll be 0. It should be 0 when you access it, but you just change that as needed. And then over here is where you can calculate sort of how many hours it should take. This is all calculated by dividing the net profit over here, by the hourly rate goals. Now these are all set up so they will automatically adjust. So, maybe you're a newer artist or you have a fairly low cost of living. So, you can afford to make $7.50 an hour. So you'll just type it in there in the absolute minimum spot and it will adjust. So now you know that if you want to make $7.50 an hour on a portrait that you sold on Etsy for $35, and you don't have any production costs, you know that you need to finish that portrait in 4.2 hours or less in order to make $7.50 an hour. So this is kind of really what I've been using to sort of keep me on track and adjust my prices as needed. So, you can just set these to whatever you want. I leave it at 9, 12, 15, maybe you'll set this to 16. You're like, oh, if I can get it done in 2 hours or less, I'm making $16 an hour. So this is just kind of a tool that can help you figure out price to time comparisons and just really get a good rate so that you're not working for peanuts and, having a race to the bottom sort of situation for your artwork. Anyway, I'm sure this has been a little longer than maybe you expected, but hopefully it was helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment below, or, if you want, you can always find me on Etsy. My shop is Fox Design, so you can message me there as well, and I'm happy to, help any other aspiring illustrators and artists that want to try to sell artwork. So please don't hesitate to contact me, ask questions. If I need to, I can make videos that go more in depth about fees and anything else that you want to talk about. So thanks a bunch for watching. I really hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. If you like content like this or have any requests for future videos, please make sure to leave a comment below. If you'd like to offer your support, I'd love to have you subscribe to my channel or even check out my Patreon link in the description. Every little bit helps, so I really appreciate your feedback and support. Ta-ta!